looking at a Fender Bassman and the not often seen and not often coveted AC568 Bassman amp that we just finished converting. And I want to show you what we did. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot out there on the internet about this, and I probably should have started the video before we started taking everything out, but I didn't. We've got it done. I'm going to show you what we did. Here's the best way to determine if you have an AC568 Fender Bassman. If you see these parts on the power tubes, these big old 150 resistors are coming off of pin 8 and going to ground, and this forms part of a cathode bias, which is part of what's weird about these amps, is they're partially cathode biased and partially fixed bias. Then they also have these little suppressor caps on the power tubes, and as you can tell, because they're in my hand, they're not in the circuit. Where you can see the green wires running to ground, that's where the big honking 150 resistors were. We cut those out. And then you have to reconnect pin 8 to ground. Some people put a 1 ohm resistor in there so they can check bias, but we use the transformer shunt method, so that's not necessary. So I've removed the 150 resistors and regrounded the pins. And this other solder spot here and there is where the little 002 suppressor caps were installed, and I cut those out also. While we were there, we replaced the grid and screen resistors with metal oxide, and that's what you do at the power tube section. Now up on the bias board, to get it back partially, at least start the conversion to a proper bias section like the 864 version of a Bassman, we replaced the bias cap with a 100 volt, and the bias resistor here is a 470 ohm metal oxide. Now here's the whole tricky section where we rewire the circuit here. We took out the resistors that are attached to the bias pot, and we have the common 220k resistors put there. We replaced the 0.47 caps with 0.1s, and we put the phase inverter to resistors, a 100 and an 820, I believe, or an 82. In any case, we matched the 864 circuit when we rebuilt this section right here. Now looking over at the phase inverter section, this got a little more tricky. This 22 was coming over here. There was another 0.1 cap from this point to that point. And the real tricky part is under the board, the negative feedback wire from the speaker goes into this little hole here, and it's attached there, and it's also attached here. And you have to lift the board and get those underboard wires running out of there. So I believe it was also attached here. So there's 2 wires under there you got to take out. So we lifted the board, removed the underboard wires, and then rewired it, trying to get a little creative, just like an 864. We moved this 22 to here. Some suggest you change that to a 10K. We had to add the 100 ohm resistor going to ground. The 0.1 cap here, we just bent the lead over to cover this, took everything else out, and then we went to the stock 820 negative feedback resistor from here. So you remove one of these that was here, and then you rewire this whole thing, but don't forget there's wires from the negative feedback wire to the speaker under the board. You got to take those out. You do that, you'll be successful. Now the rest of this, honestly, we just changed cathode caps and resistors all the way down, even to the first stage, and we didn't really change anything else. Some people remove this resistor here, this 470. There's usually a disc cap there, we replace that. But everything else is changed, including all the filter caps. All the main work was up here on the power section side. And that's an AC568 Bassman conversion to the 864 specs. Now the last thing you have to do when you redo the phase inverter is to follow that negative feedback wire back to the speaker jacks and reverse them. So you put green on positive and black on negative, because your amp is just the other way around when you opened it up. But we're changing the phase at the phase inverter, so you have to change the speaker wires to accommodate that as well. Alright, there it is. 68 Bassman AC 568 circuit. Redone.